Welcome to African American History Lesson 27. In today's video we will be discussing African Americans in indigenous communities. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as the institution of slavery spread across the U.S. South and into newly acquired territories, African Americans and indigenous people found themselves navigating shared landscapes shaped by displacement, resistance, and survival. While some African Americans sought refuge in indigenous nations, others were enslaved within them, highlighting the diverse and often contradictory relationships between Black and Native communities. In the early 19th century, some Maroons found refuge among the Seminole people in Florida. More than welcomed, they were embraced as kin and their alliance was both cultural and military. During the Second Seminole War from 1835 to 1842, Black and indigenous fighters stood united in resisting forced relocation and U.S. expansion. This historic partnership challenged the racial hierarchies of the time and reflected the possibilities of coalition building. Abraham, a prominent Black Seminole leader, was a strategist, interpreter, and political liaison who played a critical role during the Second Seminole War. Born into slavery and later emancipating, he became an advisor to Seminole chiefs and a key negotiator with U.S. officials. Gopher John, also known as John Horse, was a Black Seminole leader, military scout, and interpreter whose influence spanned both the Second Seminole War and the U.S. Civil War. A fierce advocate for Black freedom and Seminole sovereignty, he used his multilingual skills and political acumen to navigate among indigenous, African American, and U.S. military interests. While some indigenous nations sheltered the formerly enslaved, others practiced chattel slavery themselves. The Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Creek nations all held enslaved African Americans with their communities. When the U.S. government executed forced removals through the Trail of Tears, these enslaved individuals were transported westward alongside their enslavers. In an effort to codify their social order and align with American power structures, some indigenous nations developed slave codes and enforcement systems that mirrored those found in the American South. They established slave patrols, restricted the mobility of enslaved people and participated in the recapture of those who fled.
As Native nations absorbed the logic of racial slavery, they began to harden social boundaries that once allowed for Black-Indigenous kinship. Laws and cultural shifts redefined people of mixed African and Indigenous ancestry as outsiders, stripping them of tribal affiliation and disrupting generations of family and cultural connection. The reasons for this were complex, however. In most instances, it was the white enslavers who deliberately caused the rift in an effort to divide and conquer the two groups. Authorities sometimes gave limited privileges to certain indigenous communities recognized as subjects of the crown in order to create competition between the groups. Severe punishment was often imposed for cross-group alliances. There were also cultural and language barriers that were difficult to overcome. Unity requires shared identity, and colonizers worked to prevent that from forming. Finally, when survival is at stake, people often prioritize immediate safety. Some indigenous groups made alliances with colonizers in order to survive wars or epidemics, and both enslaved people and indigenous groups feared retaliation from white colonizers if they were seen cooperating. Oppression creates conditions where mistrust can flourish, especially if that mistrust is intentionally manufactured by those in power.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, please follow us on the social media platforms listed on the screen.